Hi, and welcome to Books Alive. We're so excited today because it's our first live streaming. We're really just thrilled to be able to launch into this new technology. Thanks for standing by with us as we've been able to finally get things together and join with you. I'm Barb Langridge, host of Books Alive, and I am so excited today because I have sitting here in the studio with me a guy who's won 3 Caldecott Awards, 3 Caldecott honors, and his name is David Wiesner. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Barb. It's great to be here.
It's really great to have you. And it is Wiesner. I think a lot of people probably have trouble pronouncing your name.
Well, if it's spelled correctly, they usually say Wiesner.
Wiesner.
If it's spelled wrong, which happens a lot, so then they'll say it correctly. But it's been a lifelong battle to every high school graduation, college graduation, people who should have known better pronounce it long, so I'm kind of used to it.
But it's Wiesner.
It is Wiesner.
All right, well, wonderful. All right, well, this guy has an incredible imagination, and he takes us on great journeys. I thought we'd start today by just getting a sense of who you are and where you started out. So you grew up in New Jersey, right?
I did, suburban New Jersey.
Suburban New Jersey.
Lots of families, post-war, starting families. So there were, our neighborhood just had tons of kids, every age strata, and left the house in the morning and came back in the evening, and there was always stuff going on. It was a great place to go out and play, and we were surrounded on one side by a cemetery, a swamp, and a landfill.
Wow.
What more could a kid want?
Right,
It was great, just running through all these environments, which, you could just make be anything you want.
Oh, wow.
And, it was great. It was great.
Did you have a best friend?
Yeah, I had a couple of kids, but one in particular whose family I put into my book, Hurricane, the Wilburs, who were behind me. I have a good friend, Brian, and, we would just explore and go out and play and hang out with my older brother and his friends, which was really cool. And, it was just, there was stuff happening all the time, and often, aside from the usual stuff, interesting creative things, June 29th actually is somewhat inspired by I always worry about telling these stories, making these UFOs out of old dry cleaning bags and, wire and with cotton that's been soaked in a low flammable thing that so it would kind of glow, and the thing would fill up with hot air.
Whoa.
And they would just float away with this kind of flickering, glowing
now,
thing. And at night,
how to do that?
My brother and his friends kind of were the ones who were in on it. We'd pile everybody into the car and go chasing it with walkie-talkies and stuff and track them and stuff. But sending that thing up in the air, and it was really amazing. And that's, when I came to June 29th thinking, how am I going to get these seeds up into the air?
Yeah.
Aha, I actually know.
Been there, done that.
Exactly. So it was just a great environment. And most of my books take place in situations a lot like that, very ordinary, everyday situations where some extraordinary, fantastical thing enters into it. So I just keep coming back to that environment to set my stories.
Oh, well, it's really great. Now, how about school? Were you a great student, and did all your teachers love you? Did you shine out?
I was your average student. I probably got better as I went along. I certainly, there was enough I was interested in, and but I pretty much sat in the background and tried not to be seen. Being the center of attention was something I avoided at all costs.
Not
I was
your thing.
very fairly introverted, but what I had was drawing and making pictures, and so my teachers from a very young age knew me for that. My friends, my family, everybody. That's pretty much what defined me. It wasn't like being, the best athlete or, whatever those categories were. It was a little weird, but it was it was an identification, which was something.
Yeah.
My third grade teacher sent a note home to my parents, saying David would rather be drawing than doing his schoolwork.
Yes.
And I thought, yeah. It's very perceptive. So certainly by third grade, probably even before that, it was that was my thing. That was the place I went to in school, but mostly at home. I was always making pictures, and my parents saved everything.
Oh,
Absolutely
wonderful.
everything, which is great.
Wow.
Because when you go back and look at it, you can see over time how it began to change and become more personal, and a certain threads of ideas started to come into the work that really are the same sorts of things I'm exploring today. But it's also you look at the early things, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. They look like anything anybody that age would be doing.
Really?
And so I love to show that to kids because they look at the books and they can't possibly imagine what it's like to make that kind of work. But I can say, well, look, when I was your age, I was doing exactly what you were doing. Everybody can draw. You may not believe that.
No, I'm not a believer of that.
That's because you stopped. You stopped early. It used to be everybody played the piano and everybody sang and everybody drew. It was just, there's a lot that's very teachable. It's just that most people stop doing it. And the big thing with me is I just never stopped. I kept doing it and doing it a lot. And
but I'll tell you
fortunately,
what.
it was fostered by, being the youngest in the family, youngest of 5 kids. My parents, and my siblings were all like, yeah, go ahead. There was never anybody who said, maybe you should think about something else, or gee, you're drawing some really weird things. Can't you do something normal? So there was never any roadblock put up to that.
That was normal. David, I'm going to tell you right now that if we put a drawing implement in your hand right this second and gave you a blank piece of paper, what would come out of it would be so unique and innate to you. If you handed that paper over to me and gave me the same drawing implement, it would not be quite the same fun experience.
If you did that for 6 months,
you think?
It's entirely possible. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a certain level of it.
All right.
And it's not about, and that's, again, you want to talk to kids. There's not a right way to do it. It's a mode of expression. It's a way of seeing things. How do you see and make those marks? And how you do that, how each person does it, is what's really interesting to see.
I love that.
So, for kids trying to get into the business and who are saying, oh, I have to come up with stuff that I think the publishers will want or an editor want. You're doomed already. What you need is to be able to show what you have to offer that nobody else can.
Wow.
And that's what's really interesting. So there's no right, wrong. It doesn't have to look, finished in the way that I do the work. Look at Jules Pfeiffer, the loosest, most beautiful drawings. And they're gorgeous. Or William Steig, or, there's an incredible range of what drawing can be. And not one of them is right.
It's the right or the wrong, Oh, that's really great. All right, I feel empowered. I'm going to go into the world of illustration.
There you go.
Thanks. Okay, so you ended up going on to the Rhode Island School of Design or for Design?
Of Design.
Of Design, okay.
Yes, known as RISD.
RISD. And when you walked in, like on the first day, was it intimidating or were you open to all of it?
Boy. I had been waiting a long time to go to a place like that. When I was in high school, there was someone in my school who was a few years ahead and was at RISD, and they came back to talk to my art class, and I sat there and went, oh my gosh, what is this place? Take me there now.
Cool.
I couldn't believe it. So I was fixated, I knew art school, and that was the place just because, I associated it with this guy. As it turned out, it's a fantastic program to be in. But it's also the kind of place that all those kids like me were suddenly there. And it was a little, I don't know if intimidating is the right word, but, gave me a little pause because suddenly here's everybody and that was what was so interesting, which I kind of had to recognize was all those different ways of seeing that I probably had a relatively narrow view and it just got expanded by seeing the different, what good drawing could be and what a different way of expression was. And so over that first year, it was very much a kind of an unlearning any preconceptions and then starting over.
Wow.
Which in hindsight, I think is what my book Art and Max is about
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
While I was doing it, it didn't occur to me.
Where
but
is
there's
Art and Max?
right here in the end. Your hands are right on top of it. Yeah.
All right, let's get Art and Max up here. Okay, this is Art and Max.
Yeah, so there's Arthur, and who's the horned lizard, and Max, who's the crazy little guy.
This guy right here.
And Arthur is an artist, and Max wants to be an artist. And Max, in his enthusiasm, literally paints Arthur
Yes, he
with the paint. And so now he's coated in this heavy,
All
thick
right, here they
layer
are.
of opaque paint. And he,
Yes.
he doesn't know what to do. And Arthur says to him, well, you could paint me. you know.
Yeah.
And Max takes that literally and
Yes.
starts to
What are
throw
you
the paint
doing?
across him. He says, I'm painting you.
I'm
and
painting
of course, this doesn't go over well with Arthur, but Max thinks it's great. He's delighted. So when Arthur goes, Max, and he makes this big scream, that whole outer shell cracks and breaks off.
Yes.
And underneath, you can now see that Arthur is different. He's now rendered in this very soft-edged look.
Yes.
Because he's now in pastel, very soft, powdery chalks.
Wow.
And so Max has another brainstorm, and he takes a big fan and recognizes that, hey, look at this powdery chalk. I'm going to run away. And he comes back with that big fan and
Yes.
just turns it on and blows all of that soft powdery chalk off of Arthur, who's now, again, he looks different because he's rendered in watercolor.
Uh-huh.
And Max, again,
Wow.
has a great idea. He brings a couple of buckets of water and he washes off the watercolor. And then he's left with just a line drawing. All the watercolor's now been washed down, and Arthur, who is, by this time, really had it, decides to leave on
I'm
the next
outta
page,
here.
and Max grabs him by the tail.
Yes.
And the line snaps and
Ah.
begins to unravel
Yes.
until finally, on the next page, there's, essentially nothing there. Well, he's sort of still there. He's out there somewhere.
Uh-huh.
But, Arthur, who wanted to, Max, who wanted to be an artist, he wanted to create, he now has to recreate Arthur.
Yes.
So he has to start by drawing him. And his first attempt, he picks up that line and he starts to make the shape because, how hard could it be? And then on the next page, we see his first attempt.
Oh.
Well, it's a little harder than he thought, obviously. But he has to go back. It's never perfect, the first time out. You have
Yes.
to refine it. And
Yes.
he finally, gets his drawing where it needs to be, and then gets out a vacuum cleaner and vacuums up all of the material that came off, all the pastel, all the opaque paint, all the watercolor, and turns that vacuum cleaner on reverse. And on the next page, out comes all of that material to finally bring Arthur back and fully recreate him. And now he's back, but he's been changed because how could you
is.
not be changed by this experience?
Truly.
So, I have to find a visual expression for that sort of new, enlightened Arthur. So I went to Seurat, the pointillistic,
Yes.
painter,
Yeah.
and created this, pointillistic, Arthur that
Wow.
just glows with this shimmering surface.
Oh.
So it's it's an exploration of the creative process,
Yeah.
that sort of the tearing away and the building back up.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the recognition, the realizations that the two characters come to. Max kind of gets a little more control over what he's doing. There's still paint flying around, but Arthur also loosens up and starts to, free up a bit and let loose. So there's
Yeah.
kind of a symbiotic thing that happens
Yeah.
between the two of them.
You can learn from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this one to me is one of the most playful of your books. It was just lighthearted and fun, and I loved when the line disappeared or he became just line.
Yeah.
That was really, really
Well,
cool.
it's, each book is about finding what the story is. I have no trouble making the pictures. I've always been a picture maker, but narrative is the thing that grew and grew and grew over the years and became the dominating thing that I do. The telling of the story is really the important thing. So through high school and then college and art school, it became clearer and clearer what I wanted to do with the pictures I was making was to tell stories. I thought about, there were comic books, but back when I was in school, they weren't as hip and edgy and cool as they are now, and filmmaking and different things. But what I really loved was the book, the form of the book, and through a lot of examples of really amazing books, and studying with David Macaulay, who was he's one of the great bookmakers of our time. It became clear that that was the place that I wanted to do the art that I was making and the stories that I was thinking of telling.
That's wonderful. Well, I know that you had a lot of projects along the way, but this is sort of the first finished picture book that you published, right?
Yes, the first one that was also, in a way, authored by me. When I got out of art school, I began to look for work. I mean, that's what you do as a professional illustrator. I knew I wanted to write, but I wasn't ready to do that. And so I began doing textbook work and book jackets, early readers, chapter books, basically whatever anybody would give me. Eventually I did a few, not many, but a couple of picture books for other authors, but always sort of going toward that point of writing my own stories. And I sold my first story, which became my book, Freefall, and I worked on that for quite a long time. At the same time, a little later into that, I thought, one of the ways I could get, I don't know, practice, but retell an old folktale, an old fairy tale. So I was looking through the Joseph Jacobs collections and the Andrew Lang collections of fairy tales, and I found this story called The Loathsome Dragon, and thought this would be, great. I liked the imagery in it, and I, as I now had the job of doing both the pictures and the story, I naturally avoided doing the story and started working on the pictures. And so I did a version of the story, but then actually my wife came in one day and was reading it, and she said, "Do you mind if I play around with this?" And I said, "Sure, go ahead." And she actually came back with a really wonderfully polished version of the story, which the editor was thrilled by. And I said, "Well, actually my wife worked on it, so we're going to have to be co-authors." So this was something that came together in the way that I would have been doing the work for other authors. I had a deadline that I had to work within and create the art and do the story. Unlike Freefall, which was still happening, but it was completely open-ended and allowed me several years to craft just exactly the way I wanted it to be. So, but it really was,
I love your
The Loathsome
dragon.
Dragon, was a way to...
oh, look at the scales. They're just wonderful.
And he or she, I'm sorry, in this book it's she, is I've used this dragon. It turns up in Freefall. Turns up in a number of other places. Whenever I've needed a dragon, I've gone to that.
I noticed that. The dragon kept reappearing.
The last place was in The Three Pigs, and that was sort of the official retirement. When that book won the Caldecott, it was, I think we have to retire.
Put the dragon to bed. I named that one the Winsome Dragon. This is the Loathsome Dragon, but that one in The Three Pigs to me is the Winsome Dragon.
It is definitely a friendlier take on that dragon. So.
Well, it interests me that you published this one and we're working on Freefall at the same time, because this is a lovely retelling of a fairy tale, and the pictures are perfect in the tone and in keeping with the text. But when I picked up Freefall, I got my hand on it. This to me is where you really became you.
Absolutely.
And it was different, very different from this. And this is where he really launches into his amazing, timeless space that he just does like nobody else can. And,
well, this was the place that I really had a chance to explore all the things that I had been thinking about that were personal to me and the way that I wanted to express them. And once I did it, I knew it was far better than anything I had done.
Wow.
And the reaction to it was also, so much greater than the others, that it was
Yeah.
I was pretty much convinced, obviously,
Yeah.
this is what I need to be doing. Not that I'm not attempting to take those other stories that I was doing and do the best job I can, but
Right.
in here, there's no filter between me and the work. It's
Yeah.
all one thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly,
Did you have to
it
give
all
yourself
came together.
permission to do that, or did it just keep pushing
No,
forward?
no, it was always there.
Okay.
I didn't have to give myself permission, but
Okay.
fortunately I found an editor who gave me the opportunity, and when I showed her the rough version of this, in hindsight, she must have been going, "What is this guy talking about?" But she said, "It's interesting." I'm sure
Yeah.
she was thinking, "This is interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything quite like this. Let's see if he can do it." And
Yeah.
she gave me the opportunity
Wow.
to see if I could pull it off, as it were.
Wow.
And so it never, I didn't stop and think, I wonder if I should, or if this will fit the mainstream, because no one was telling me that it wasn't
wow.
typical of the mainstream.
Yeah.
So, it was me. So essentially, Freefall is one long picture, with the
Yeah.
exception of the first single page
Okay.
image
Okay,
where the
where the
boy is
boy's-
falling asleep.
Okay.
And the last one, when he's waking, everything in
Okay.
between.
So here he
And
is
so
asleep.
one of the ways I did that on the first page is that there's a white border around the entire image.
Let's go
Sorry,
back.
keep making you go
That's
back.
okay.
And
Okay.
then when we turn, I'm going to say this a lot, the turn of the page. The turn of the page is one of the most important parts of writing a picture book. You do it about 12 times. And every time, what is the consideration of what's happening from page to page? So you can see the border on the top and on the left side and on the bottom, but it's not here. It bleeds off.
Okay.
And then it's bleeding off on that side and this side now. So the border is there to help the eye carry you through those pages.
Gotcha.
And then it
Okay.
returns again at the
Okay.
end when we reach the end of his dream when he's waking up.
Okay.
And it moves, you can see this map. He was
Yes.
reading this atlas, dreaming of adventure in far off places. And
Right.
so that map floats in and out through all the pictures. It's
Okay.
almost like, if you want to be literal, a map of his mind, his imagination. So as he goes into these, he's now small, entering this castle-like place with the maze, and here's the map rolled up like a piece of paper among the turrets of the castle. And it just,
See, isn't it
again,
fun to
it
have him read the book for you?
carries you, and so here he's now shaking hands with the suit of armor, which falls apart and it's full of birds. That's the kind of thing where I simply accept that image came to me. I'm not questioning why is
Right.
that happening.
Right.
It's just in a dream.
Yeah.
These things happen.
Yeah.
And so here's the birds are sort of escorting the map. The wall of the castle is now changing into the scales of the dragon, which is again leading you off
Your
the page.
imagination is just phenomenal.
Well, there's a certain logic to it
Oh,
as well that
please.
leads you from one thing to the next thing.
Okay.
Here's the book. The trees are turning into the book. That's literal on one sense, but also visually, the bark that we can see the grain on the wood becomes the edge of the paper, which is suddenly the open book. And there's the map. They're
Wow.
running into it.
Are you a perfectionist?
Yeah.
I thought so. It just shows.
I love, I love the detail. I love
Yeah.
a world that's as, that fully rich, which,
Right.
you have the art history book that you brought with you. As a kid, I would go down to our local library, the Bound New Jersey Public Library,
Let me get that. Go ahead.
and I would just go back in the stacks where they kept all the Time Life books. Kids today, I'm sure, don't know the Time Life, but, there were just hundreds of them, it seemed, and all the books on the great artists and art movements. And it was like this whole, I was going to say this whole world, many, many worlds opening up within those images. There was just an extraordinary collection of
But David,
stories
it's
and
what-
pictures happening.
It's what you see. It's what you see. That is a gift to us. It really is. It's just incredible. All right.
So,
we all look at the Mona Lisa and look at her.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's great. There's no
She's
denying
great.
that.
Okay.
But, I loved looking through the Renaissance painters, Da Vinci and Michelangelo, Dürer, and all these artists. And Bruegel is, one too. But if you also look in the background sometime, the landscape that's back there is just fantastic. And I guarantee you Da Vinci made that up. It is an imagined landscape. Because it's these roads and paths and waterfalls and mountains and there's streams. and it, to me, it feels like Mars. It feels like this alien place. It's
Wow.
just so strange, and that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing where you look in the back of a lot of these images, and you go, "Oh, I want to go in there. I want to get in that picture."
Yeah.
And, I mentioned Bruegel, who, from the very close foreground to the far, far distance, everything is in perfect detail, and they just suck you into the world of that picture, and I began to think, that's the way I want to make pictures that are that full of, they're full of stories, there's all stuff happening, life happening beyond the main subject. And that's the kind of picture making that really intrigued me.
What I read about you is that you look at this and you imagine it almost like a movie where you can see what happened here before this moment in time and after this moment in time. Is that accurate for how you see it?
One of the other things that played into my visual development was anything telling stories with pictures. So movies in particular, that I used to watch old movies on TV all the time, particularly old science fiction movies and things like that. But there is that sense of, well, here's one moment, but what's the rest? What's happening? I think for any illustrator, hopefully, in a picture book, you're not simply replicating what the text says. You're looking for what's happening in between the lines. N.C. Wyeth was great at that. When you read, there's one of my favorites in Treasure Island, where as I just forgot his name, goes off. Jim, isn't it? The boy is going off on this ship, and his mother says goodbye. It's one line where he says he said goodbye to his mother and he left. And there's all sorts of other stuff in the text there, but Wyeth chose this moment of the boy walking down the street. In the background has the mother. She's got her apron up, kind of wiping her eyes, and he sets that whole scene, which is just this one, couple of words in the text. And you have to go in there and find the rest of the story. So that's one moment, but there's an entire, other thing happening there.
So after Freefall was born, then Hurricane was born, right?
Right.
Okay. And this, did you have a memory of going through a hurricane as a child?
Yes.
Okay.
I mentioned this, I was thinking about this idea as a story to use to my editor after Freefall was done. And about 30 seconds in, she goes, "Okay, that's your next book." We'll get a contract.
30 seconds.
Yeah, because it had this whole story arc to it. And so this is a story that did in fact happen to me. So I used, this is my house and my yard, the trees in my yard. I went back to all the old slides my father took and used all this material to create the world of it centered around that.
Do you like to have something physical to draw from, or do you draw from your brain?
I do both. Initially, when I'm creating the story and I'm not looking at anything, I'm just putting down very rough images. I'm not going and doing any research at that point. And while a lot of what I'm drawing remains in the finished thing, the stage after that is to go out and then find the things that are going to form the pictures that I'm really going to make. And I like to look at, the best way to draw something is look at it. So I'm often making models of things, or you have to use photographic reference for certain things, but the sense of what did my house look like? What was the front door like? But I'm turning it into space. I'm not just copying from photographs. That just looks like a copied photograph.
Okay.
I use it to inform what I'm doing, but I'm
I love
always
the tape.
building stuff to be able to see, to get a sense. So I had a little, I found when the tree comes down, I think it's a couple of pages on. This is, actually, this is my living room, that I have that mirror, right? I got from my parents.
Wow.
The wallpaper in the bedroom is the wallpaper that was in my room,
Was
things
this
like that. This was one of
actually-
our chairs. That's a
Okay.
painting that was on our wall. My oldest sister did.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
I use that, and it becomes a specific place. It's not just It's a
Yeah.
room in a house. It's
Yeah.
now got a, whether anybody knows it's mine or not,
Yeah.
it feels like a real
Home.
place.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this wallpaper is,
Yeah.
that was fun kind of trying to recreate
wow.
that.
Yeah. So you brought us into your home as a child, and then the storm rages outside.
Yeah, it was always interesting being on the East Coast and having, in New Jersey, and having a storm come up the coast, a hurricane. So you kept waiting and waiting and waiting for it to
Yeah,
arrive. You
yeah.
knew it was coming.
Yes.
And then when it hit, it was a mixture of, it was frightening.
Yeah.
The wind is raging, the water's coming down, the house is leaking. But, all of us were at home. And we'd play games and sort of keep distracted and that kind of thing. Or else we'd have to, get pots and pans. And so one side of it was really exciting and fun because as a little kid, I was there with my older siblings. And it was a really exciting thing to be in there. So it was this funny mix of both frightening and exciting at the same time.
Wow. And
And then the aftermath,
morning after,
this tree came down in our backyard. It actually fell into our neighbor's yard, and suddenly, what a gift to play on this thing. It was the next day, the sun was out, it was shining and stuff, and wow, there's this incredible tree, which had, you look up at it, it's gigantic. Now it's on the ground, and you can climb all over it in a way you never could before. So it became this just object of fantasy for us to play on, which, the next pages in the book sort of take us through these imagined, landscapes of being in the
mighty leopard.
being in the jungle and outer space and out on the high seas and
Is
all
this
these
how
different
your mind
things.
works all the time? Are you always seeing something beyond the normal, the ordinary in your life?
A lot of it, most of it comes out when I'm drawing.
Okay.
That's the act that triggers that. I mean, I'm thinking along those lines, but it's once I start drawing, it's suddenly like the light switch goes on, and that's
your right brain
where
kicks
it
in.
happens. Yeah, but it's that conduit to the paper that
Gotcha.
just suddenly
Yeah.
triggers stuff.
Wow.
Is the key thing.
Oh my gosh.
So
People
it was
must-
great. It was came back around. Of course, they eventually the guys with the chainsaws show up, and after these grand adventures,
After we go out into space,
right,
please.
and then have a hide in the branches.
Hiding
and
in
that
the
was
branches.
great.
Uh-oh.
They come to cut up the tree and take it away, which
Yeah.
of course was inevitable, but just sort of left us sitting there hoping that another storm might come through and bring down another tree
Another
so that we could
tree.
do that again.
Yeah. So it's making opportunity out of whatever,
Right.
wherever you are, and whatever.
And then there's one last image, which with no text again, which just sort of takes us into the mind of their cat, who
Yes.
has been present throughout the entire book, but now the cat too is sort of every time it rains, what does the cat see out there? Yeah, just a world of fish going by. So
Swimming by.
everybody has their fantasy life, even the cats.
Even a cat.
Yeah.
Is this foreshadowing of Mr. Waffles?
No, I had no
No?
idea. That was
Okay.
Waffles is 20 years later.
But you
that was my cat I grew up
Okay.
with, so I put her in the story as well. And Mr. Waffles is in fact the cat I have now. So
And you love to put fish and cats into your stories.
there's a lot of things that
Recur.
and I had to at some point decide, was I going to keep doing that or not? Was that? And I learned in art school. I had teachers who would say, accept that stuff that comes out. Don't censor
good.
yourself.
Yeah.
If you get these ideas, take it out and look at it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason it keeps turning up.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
looking back at the work I did as a kid,
Yeah.
there's a lot of the fish appear. Things that don't normally fly. Flying is something that comes up a huge amount. Vegetables, pigs.
Love the vegetables.
So there's
Yeah.
and they're for visual reasons. There's something about the drawing of them that is so very appealing to me. And so within
Yeah.
my sketchbooks, these are things that I'm constantly drawing, and they tend to make their way into my books.
Okay.
And sometimes they just out of nowhere seem to want to be in a picture, and I say, okay, I'm not going to question that.
You know, you hear authors talk about a character that kind of insists on being in the story, you know,
Right.
or will call to them if they're working on something else. And you've got the same thing going on with the illustrations, that it just needs to be in the picture.
Yeah, it's there are things that again, it's while I'm drawing and it appears, and if it makes sense, even in a strange, surreal way, for it to be there, then that's more interesting than going, oh, well, that's too strange. I know, you know, my editor and I, you know, we have this, I did at one point say to her, you know, and I was thinking, is this too weird?
Yeah.
And she just said, weird is good.
Oh,
So
well,
that's our
awesome.
sort of little mantra.
Weird
that
is
way,
good.
yeah, weird is good.
That is
So,
great. All right, and here comes the Caldecott winner, Tuesday. And this was born of a Cricket magazine cover, I think.
It was.
Your frog
I
friends?
was asked to do a cover for Cricket magazine, and they're great because you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But they happen to say this issue has a lot of stories about frogs in it. And my favorite kinds of assignments in art school were always the ones that were the most vague. You know, here's a word and go react to it. So I
Yeah.
just said frogs, okay, that's good. Don't say anything more. And I went to my sketchbook and I began to draw frogs because they're great shapes to draw, kind of big, round, and squishy, and they've got these bulgy eyes and that big mouth and
Yeah.
interesting patterns. And so I was drawing some frogs, and then I drew one on a lily pad, and that was one of those moments where you know, a connection is made.
Yeah.
You can't plan for it. You just kind of hope this kind of thing happens. But when it does, you then go, wait, let's stop and really look at this. So
Yeah.
I drew the shape, the kind of dome blob of a shape of a frog on the flat circular base of the lily pad. I didn't see a frog on a lily pad. I now saw a flying saucer, a classic flying saucer shape.
Yeah.
So the one shape made me think of the other shape. And that made me say, well, wait a minute, why don't I take the frog and the lily pad and make them fly around like a flying saucer? So there you go. That right there
Off we
became the
go.
image. And after I did the cover for Cricket, I said, you know, I can tell a story about these guys. I can make a whole book out of that.
Yeah.
And then you just go, okay, I'm a frog. I can fly. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
Yeah.
I live in a swamp. I'm going to get out of the swamp. Where would you go? Into the town. Let's go see where the people.
Yeah.
And literally, like a movie, just mentally
Yeah.
follow them as they on their travels and see what kind of things they get in, you know, mixed up
Wow.
in. So, you know, they float in through the town. This guy, you know,
Is that
up
a
having-
self-portrait?
It was in 1991. They're flying by the window there. They come flying by, you know, and crash into the laundry that's been left on the line and get tangled up. And
Which today, I don't know if children would realize we put laundry on the line.
I know, I wondered that, but there you go.
Jeez.
And so now they've got the sort of towel capes on, and decide it's time to go inside. So as they go inside the house, they come in through the window and down through the chimney. And when they get inside, they discover the world of television.
And the remote control.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, on one plane, the whole point of doing this picture was for that pink tongue on the remote control.
Perfect.
But so the woman has fallen asleep. So there's no words in the story. Everything in all these pictures is there to tell the story. So, you know, everything about this is going to give you this impression of the scene. Who is this person? She's fallen asleep watching the TV. Where does she live? Well, she's got these big overstuffed chairs with the floral patterns and the lace doilies on the arms and the lamps and the knickknacks on all the tables, the paintings on the walls, that funny fuzzy wallpaper, you know, oriental rugs. All of this stuff is there to give you this instant picture of this character
Who
and
is
her
she?
life. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to create.
Oh.
And again, you know, this is a lifetime of watching cartoons. You know, here he's flying along by himself, minding his own business. Here comes the frog. How do you stop when you're flying in midair? You put out your feet and screech to a halt and go the other way. And again, this is another one of the classic sort of turn of the page. You're moving this way. Oh, wait a minute. Reverse direction. Go that way. Here comes the dog.
Yep.
Of course, the dog doesn't realize when you turn the page. Now,
Dun,
again,
dun, dun, dun.
reversing direction again, here come dozens of frogs to chase him. So it's
You thought you were leading this pack.
right, a classic
Oh my
setup.
gosh.
And again, what's happening here? What's in this picture? Well, the sky is getting lighter. The sun is coming up. You can see suddenly the warm light is on all the characters. That's the sunlight. It's breaking the spell. They're all falling. The lily pads are coming down. And of course, the frogs are now falling to the ground too. And then on the next page, where the sun is fully up, we're in morning, they've landed, and they have to get back to the swamp, and now they have to hop all the way past those houses back out there. And if you look here, they are not happy about it at all.
I love him. Do it again, do it again.
Yes, they want to be flying. And the people in the town wake up and they come out, and oh my gosh, the town's covered in lily pads. What's going on? They've called the state trooper. He's here with the bloodhounds. The inspector, he's got the pencil. He's picking up the lily pad. The cops are there. The guy is being interviewed by that's my wife. That's me.
Oh, wow.
The camera crew. The dog who was being chased. The house that was in the scene with the TV. So they're all out kind of trying to figure out what's happening. And then when you look into the sky and you look at the flags.
I didn't see them. Oh, how wonderful. Oh,
there's
that's
a little
great.
sort of, harbinger of what has happened.
Yeah,
over the night,
oh my
so.
gosh.
And then, of course, how can we not go next Tuesday? Because this town, something strange happens every Tuesday. And next Tuesday out on this farm, there's this shadow going up the side of the barn. And this Tuesday, it's the turn of the frogs.
Next.
The frogs, the pigs. And this is an image that I'd been drawing in sketchbooks for a long time. I just envisioned these pigs. They're just so much fun to draw. This big round shape, like they're filled with helium, just floating away. And so when I got to the end and what's going to happen the next week, I immediately thought, this is a chance to use those pigs.
The pigs are going up.
Yeah.
All right, where are the three little pigs? There they are. I want to know. All right, you took the classic story, also won a Caldecott for the three little pigs here. Okay, and you took the classic story, but you weren't really satisfied with the traditional.
Well, I didn't choose it. I'm going to retell an old tale in a new way. I had this idea that I've been really playing around with since I was in college, in art school. This idea that inside the book there could be this whole other world. That if I went behind the pictures, there'd be something else in there. And when I began to think about trying to turn that into an actual picture book, I started by trying to write a story, begin a story, because I was going to have the characters leave pretty quickly. And it was very, very confusing. Because no one would know that story. They wouldn't know who the characters are. So
Here they are on the loose.
as those
These
characters,
are the three little pigs of the House of Straw, Brick, and Twigs.
as those characters, left the story, it was very confusing. So the realization was I would need a story that as many people as possible would already know, so that when they left, you would go, oh yeah, it's that.
Yeah.
We're just going to go follow them where they go.
Yeah.
And it took me this long to make the decision, what are the most universal stories? I went, well, there's, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or Hansel and Gretel, the Three Little Pigs, and that was it. I stopped right there.
Why the white space?
This is the book. This is the land inside the book.
Okay.
It's just, at first, there's nothing back there. They're exploring. They get on that paper airplane. They're flying around, checking it out until they come back, again. They're about to meet their shadow here and crash. But it's just this big exploration.
Okay.
And they're sort of, what is this place? When suddenly he says, hey, over here, there's this sort of green haze. So that when they come over here, suddenly, they're literally pulling the picture down. This guy, though, he's looking out, squinting, going, I think somebody's out there. He can almost see you, the reader.
Oh, he engages.
But they go, hey, over here, come over here. Because
Yeah.
what have they found? They found another story.
Oh, yes.
It's not empty.
Yes.
This is where all the other stories are.
Yes.
And
Oh, wow.
so this turns out to be Hey Diddle Diddle, the Cat and the Fiddle. And they enter into the story. And when they go in the story, they adopt the illustration style of that story, which is really revolting. This really brightly colored, sickly thing. And they say, let's get out of here. And so here they are, half in and half out of the picture, coming out. But the cat and the fiddle decides to follow them out.
Oh my gosh.
And so they now basically go in and out of various stories, exploring these other stories, picking up some other friends along the way until they realize they want to go back to their own story, which they rebuild, re-enter, and then rewrite the ending too, and they all lived happily ever
How
after.
many times have people told you you're a genius? Countless.
You know, I don't know.
You
I don't know
are
how to
a genius.
I'm
You
just,
absolutely are a genius. And, you know, I can't thank you enough for taking your talent and turning it to the world of children and children's picture books.
and this is, you know, I'm not trying to deflect too much, but this is a field, as you well know, where there are the most creative people around right now.
Yeah.
People who might have gone into filmmaking and painting in different places who have come in here because of what you can do in a picture book. And, you know, I myself look at books that are being done and just, you know, gasp in admiration
Yes.
all the time.
All
It's
the
an amazing
talent.
form.
It is.
So,
This is his most recent winner. He won the Caldecott honor for this past January. This is the wonderful Mr. Waffles. And we're going to leave you with that. And I hope that if you have enjoyed, and I'm sure you have, taking a look at some of the books, we didn't even get to all of them, but you get a sense of his amazing imagination, sense of adventure, the creativity that just pours out of this man. And this one is you're just going to adore it because it's a fantastic story about aliens and a cat and a historic Cheez-It. So, David Wiesner, thank you so much for coming to be with us today.
it was my pleasure. Thanks for
It has just
having
been
me.
such a treat to explore all of your just phenomenal books. So I hope you guys enjoyed being with us today. And, everybody needs a book and a hug. So I hope you'll come and visit us at my website, A Book and a Hug. But more than that, get out there and find your own style just as he found his, and get out there into that wonderful, adventurous world of books. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you the next time.